The Doom franchise on the Nintendo Switch has really come a long way. A few years ago, we got Doom 2016, which seemed like a miracle. And since then, we've gotten Doom 1 and 2, plus a bunch of expansions downloadable within those games, including Final Doom, Doom 3 and all of its DLC, Doom 64, and although it was delayed, the very ambitious follow-up to Doom 2016 that a lot of Switch owners thought was never coming is finally here. Here is my review of Doom Eternal for the Nintendo Switch. When it comes to story, Eternal takes place 8 months after the events of Doom 2016 and takes a nod from the original Doom 2. The forces of Hell have invaded and overwhelmed planet Earth. The Doomslayer then returns aboard a huge castle-like spaceship to take out the Hellpriest leaders and save the planet. The thing this game's story does the best is expanding the lore. We get a ton of backstory on a bunch of new characters and races, along with the Doomslayer himself, showing a lot of his history as well as some hints and nods that this game is connected to all of the previous games. When it comes to gameplay, this game is a first-person shooter with a lot of platforming and exploration elements. Now, as far as this version of the game, Doom Eternal on the Nintendo Switch includes the story mode and battle mode, with the DLC coming at a later date. And before moving on, some of you might be asking about the invasion mode, where a player could go into another player's story campaign and attack them. This mode actually hasn't launched for the game at all. Even the consoles and PC version don't have it yet. But with the game modes we do have, as I said just a moment ago, there is story mode for single player, as well as battle mode where you can do online multiplayer with customizable Slayer and Demon skins. But let's be honest, the bulk of this game is the story mode, which actually has a different style and feel than Doom 2016 did. Instead of going from mission to mission, you go between missions in a huge explorable spaceship that acts as a kind of hub. You have a lot of different things that you can do here, from doing a lot of story progression from the actual story from mission to mission and listening to little broadcasts from around the world, to viewing the Doomslayer's room and seeing all of the pretty little nods to not only the Doom franchise but also Wolfenstein and Fallout, and the multitude of things that you can actually use collectibles to unlock here, from simple weapon and armor upgrades, to gaining access to the iconic armor from the classic Doom games and even the original Praetor suit from Doom 2016. And just FYI, if you use these other costumes in story mode, the cinematic story scenes will reflect the costume you have equipped. Now, when we get to missions, Eternal basically did the same thing Doom 2 did. It took what Doom 2016 had and made everything bigger and better. The exploration-friendly levels have a lot more secrets and are significantly larger than before. Not only will they take much longer to actually trek through to get to the next part of the story, but you've got more tools and abilities to help you with that exploration. You can jump and platform around like you could before, but you can now attach to walls and climb around like Spider-Man, as well as punching through walls and even swimming underwater to gain access to even more areas. They also made some nice little changes to add more to both the modern and retro elements of the game. As far as retro is concerned, you've got ammo icons littered around the map where you can pick up ammo and health, very similar to how they were in the original games, along with all of the little radiation suit icons that, tied with the fact that a lot of the new enemies are classic enemies that were not brought back for Doom 2016, really just gives a nostalgic feeling that harkens back to those older games. And on the modern side, it has completely revamped the weapon and armor upgrade system, making it much easier to use, as well as adding a fast travel system, showing just how huge the new levels are and giving you easy access to pretty much all of them when you're at the end and want to finish up all of those collectibles. And when we get into combat, that has completely gone to the next level. The 2016 reboot was a very difficult game to get used to, and Eternal is significantly harder. When they start throwing the mini-boss like Arachnotrons at you from the first stage of the game, even dropping down to the easy difficulty does not make this game easy. All enemies have certain ways and weak points that you have to exploit to be able to fight them, and if you don't, it's going to be a really brutal time from start to finish. And the farther you go into the game, the harder it's going to get. When you find a lot of the boss fights of the game, like the Doom Hunter, It's really tough to get through each fight, and it makes it even harder because not long after you face these bosses, they start showing up as a common enemy type in the future story levels. Doom Eternal is a very unforgiving game that will keep you on your toes from start to finish, especially when it has a lot of those you're locked in a room until you fight wave after wave of enemy battles. And quite honestly, the sheer number and length of how many of those types of encounters the game has is the only thing I believe brings it down a bit. Now don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with these types of encounters, but as I went further and further into the game, they got a lot longer and more frequent. It felt kind of like the end of Doom 2016, where you're just kind of stuck in those big waves just wanting to get them over with, except for pretty much the entire game of Eternal. It's the principle of too much of a good thing turns pretty repetitive over time. And speaking of time, let's talk about content and length, which Eternal has a lot of. From start to finish, I only had to replay a level once or twice to be able to get enough collectibles to unlock the special secret weapon, and I finished the story in about 20 hours. Now, this isn't even close to getting all of the collectibles or going into that nice little computer terminal and playing Eternal's versions of Doom 1 and 2. This is just for completing the story, and 20 hours is quite a lot for an FPS. Now let's go into presentation, which pretty much everybody should have assumed was going to have a lot of blurring. Doom Eternal has huge open areas, a lot of moving pieces, and if Doom 2016 was something people thought was impossible on a handheld, Eternal definitely was. So there definitely is a lot of blurring, and it's very similar to what Doom 2016 looks like. It fluctuates a lot in some areas, like the main area of the spaceship actually does look a little bit worse on the blur scale, even without going into handheld mode. But they did improve on one thing, which was the UI. Doom 2016 had a lot of codex entries for you to read the lore, and it was really blurry in both docked and handheld modes. Eternal thankfully has a much better looking UI, so all of those lore-rich codex entries you can read both in docked and handheld mode pretty clearly. And when we get to performance, things are looking good. Eternal plays at a nice and smooth 30 frames per second from start to finish in both docked and handheld modes. The only time I ever saw it drop was during the cinematic scenes, specifically in handheld mode. That's all I have to say about that, so now let's go into battery life. On the original model, Doom Eternal has a battery range of 2 hours and 39 minutes up to 3 hours and 25 minutes. On the Nintendo Switch Lite, it has a range of 2 hours and 58 minutes up to 4 hours and 12 minutes. And on the Redboxer V2 2019 model, it has a range of 4 hours and 7 minutes up to 5 hours and 33 minutes. In conclusion, Panic Button has performed another miracle, or demonic ritual depending on how you want to look at it, in getting Doom Eternal running smoothly on a handheld console. While the visuals are pretty blurry and the game's sheer amount of wave-based mobs can feel repetitive from time to time, Eternal is a fast-paced and brutal first-person shooter for series fans to trek through and enjoy. Reviews to go rates Doom Eternal for the Nintendo Switch an 8 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thanks for watching and have a great day.